Okay. 500 years ago, Paracelsus noted that every substance is a poison, but it's the dose that makes the poison. And today, food is a poison for too many Americans because of the quantity and the quality that they consume. Now, limiting harmful exposures is a classic environmental health challenge. And if we want to accelerate progress in obesity control, we need to limit the harmful exposures we have to food. So I want to talk about two, what I think are very promising ways, but something we haven't tried before to address obesity. So the first is to address the extra large portions that are served when we dine out. And it's very important to address that because we're eating out more than ever. In fact, 50% of all food dollars are spent away from home. This graph shows that for every meal or snack eaten away from home, we get an average of an additional 132 calories compared to that same meal prepared at home. And for obese people, it's almost double that. And you wonder, why haven't we addressed these harmful exposures before? It's because I think we believe that this is something that individuals should be able to control on their own if they wanted to. But last year, the Cochrane Review was published on portion sizes, and it basically showed that if you serve people too much, they're going to eat too much. And that most people really lack the capacity to limit how much they eat when there's too much available. And it implies that actually the servers have more control over how much we eat than individuals do themselves. So, we've tried to address extra calories indirectly through calorie labeling, but the evaluations have not been promising. And, when you think that 30% of Americans lack the numeracy skills to make use of that information, we really need to look elsewhere. And so what I would propose is that we treat these harmful exposures the same way we treat harmful exposures from air and water, and that is to develop standards and benchmarks. And I know it's feasible because it's not rocket science. It's a matter of using measuring cups and kitchen scales. And we had success with a project that we did working with Loncheras in Los Angeles. Those are Hispanic food trucks. And we worked with about a dozen cooks, most of whom had less than a high school education. And they were able to prepare meals that met the MyPlate guidelines, less than 700 calories, but they measured out, a cup of vegetables, half a cup of fruit. And it worked very well. If we want people to eat less, we have to serve them less. So the next approach would be to address impulse marketing. Now, impulse marketing is a problem because it changes the way that we process information and the kind of decisions that we make. Just by making products salient, convenient, and ubiquitous, it discourages thoughtful and deliberate choices and fosters impulsive, automatic, and often uncontrollable choices. And we think of supermarkets as the good places, but in fact, most people get their discretionary calories, junk food, sugar-sweetened beverages from these locations. And it's really egregious. What's happening is that junk food, sugary beverages, they're in multiple places in the store. They're in up to 40% of the aisles, the special displays, the end aisle displays, more than half of the perimeter walls, and almost all the cash registers. And just placing these kinds of foods in salient locations like the end aisle displays increases the sales by at least 50% to up to twofold. And manufacturers are paying to put their products in these locations. And so trying to limit this impulse marketing is important because it undermines our long-term health goals. So you may think I'm tilting at windmills here, right, to try and change the food environment, but I'm actually optimistic that we can do something because we've done something similar before. And what I want to talk to you about is how we controlled alcohol more than 200 years ago. In fact, 200 years ago, before the Industrial Revolution, alcohol was ubiquitous. It's like junk food today. It was the beverage of choice. It was served to children. It was drunk all day long on the job. The tavern was the central institution in town, and America had a reputation as a nation of drunkards. That's true. And but it was there were a lot of problems. You know, there were families who lost their breadwinners, a lot of domestic violence, employers lost money because drunk employees aren't very productive. And so a temperance movement started, and rather than blame individuals, they blamed alcohol, demon rum. And the solution was to control its availability. And so they passed regulations. They prohibited the sale of alcohol to children. They limited the days and hours where it could be sold. They prohibited drinking on the job. They even subsidized alcohol-free taverns so people could socialize without being pressured to drink. And within a 10-year period, the consumption of alcohol dropped to 1/3 of what it had been. And it's really largely stayed at that level today with these regulations. So the kind of regulations that we have now, they're pretty well accepted for alcohol. You won't find too many people that would say, you know, at least adults, that would say that these regulations interfere with their ability to drink as much as they want. But what these regulations do is that they protect people from being nudged to drink too much. And so those standards include having standardized portions. I mean, it's limiting its accessibility, where it can be sold, to whom it could be sold. And we have curbs on impulse marketing of alcohol. We don't see alcohol at the cash register. It's not in vending machines. We don't have too many states that have drive-up windows for alcohol, although there are a couple. And there are more alcohol problems in those locations. You know, we don't have all-you-can-drink alcohol buffets. And so I mean, the things that work for alcohol, they're really relevant to obesity control. So I think we need to reframe the problem that, you know, the obesity epidemic is really not the consequence of 100 million individual failures, but rather the result of harmful food provider practices. And we should be addressing these problems at the point of purchase and make sure that people are served appropriate portions, and then they would be empowered to control how much they ate. We should be prohibiting automatic default options. So, for example, if you get a meal, we shouldn't give them a free fountain drink with it, or an automatic order, a side order of fries. And we should be limiting impulse marketing so that if we are going to make poor choices, those should be deliberate rather than automatic. And if we could, you know, make some progress in these areas to change the food environment, I think, you know, within a decade, we would really see a dramatic change in the prevalence of obesity. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so Deborah's talked to us about policy and regulation. Let's hear some more about what actually works.